Imagine waking up one morning with a quiet, unsettling certainty that the life you have been living is not entirely your own. Not in a dramatic sense, no grand conspiracy, no sudden revelation, just a slow, creeping awareness that the beliefs you hold, the choices you make, and the desires that drive you forward may not have risen from the deepest part of who you are. Instead, they were handed to you by your upbringing, by society, by the invisible expectations of people whose approval you learned to crave long before you understood what approval even meant. This is where the real question begins. How much of you is actually you? Carl Gustav Jung, one of the most visionary minds in the history of psychology, spent his life wrestling with this very question. And what he discovered was both deeply troubling and profoundly liberating. He believed that life does not truly begin until we find ourselves. Not the version of ourselves polished for public consumption, not the self we perform at dinner tables and job interviews, but the raw, complete, unfiltered self, the one most of us spend a lifetime running from. From the moment we enter the world, the shaping begins. We are given names before we can speak. We are assigned roles before we can choose. We are taught through 1,000 subtle corrections what is acceptable and what must be buried. Cry too much and you are told to toughen up. Dream too freely and you are told to be realistic. Feel too deeply and you're told you are too sensitive for this world. And so, piece by piece, we learn to edit ourselves. Jung called the mask we construct the persona, the face we present to survive and succeed in society. It is not inherently dishonest. We all need a persona to navigate the world. But the danger arrives the moment we forget it is a mask at all. When we begin to believe that we are the persona, we lose contact with everything real beneath it. We become strangers to ourselves, living out a script we never consciously agreed to write. But here is what Jung understood that most people do not. The parts of yourself you suppress do not disappear. They migrate. They sink beneath the surface of consciousness and gather in what he called the shadow, that vast, dark interior landscape where your rejected fears, unspoken desires, hidden wounds, and dormant strengths quietly reside. The shadow is not evil. It is simply everything you were taught to hide, and it does not wait patiently. It speaks through your inexplicable reactions, the anger that flares disproportionately, the people who irritate you for reasons you cannot quite name, the self-sabotage that derails you just as success comes within reach. When you are triggered by a quality in someone else, Jung would gently suggest you look inward. More often than not, what disturbs us most in others is the mirror of something unacknowledged within ourselves. This is not a comfortable truth, but it is a freeing one. Because within the shadow lies not just your darkness, but your missing wholeness. The parts of yourself you rejected at the world's insistence are often the very parts that carry your greatest power. The sensitive child who was told to toughen up may grow into the most empathetic leader in the room. The dreamer who was called unrealistic may carry the vision that changes everything. Integration, the courageous act of facing and reclaiming what you buried, is not weakness. It is the bravest thing a human being can do. Jung mapped the inner world with extraordinary precision, identifying universal patterns he called archetypes, ancient inherited blueprints woven into what he termed the collective unconscious, a deep psychological inheritance shared across all of humanity. The hero, the shadow, the wise elder, the innocent,
These are not just characters in myths and fairy tales. They are living forces within you, shaping your choices, your relationships, and your sense of purpose in ways that largely escape your awareness.
Consider the hero, that part of you that longs for meaning, that feels the pull of something greater, that rises to meet difficulty with a stubborn, quiet resolve. The hero does not exist in isolation. Every hero must face a shadow, not to destroy it, but to understand it. In the great stories, the monster the hero must defeat is always, in some sense, a reflection of themselves. So too in life. And then there is the balance Jung called the anima and animus, the feminine within the masculine within the feminine, not gender in any biological sense, but the complementary energies every human being carries, intuition alongside logic, vulnerability alongside strength, receptivity alongside assertion. When these forces are at war within us, we feel fractured. When we allow them to coexist, to inform and complete each other, we begin to feel, perhaps for the first time, genuinely whole. But there is a final layer, the deepest one, and it is the most disorienting of all. Most of us move through life assuming our identity is fixed, a solid, consistent self, defined by memory and experience, moving steadily through time. But Jung understood what philosophers and mystics have whispered for centuries. The self is not a static thing. It is fluid, vast, immeasurably larger than the narrow story the ego tells about who we are. The ego is not the enemy. It is the organizing principle that gives us a sense of continuity, a sense of I. But the ego also builds walls. It says, this is who I am, this is who I am not. And in doing so, it cuts us off from the boundless depths of our own being. True individuation, Jung's word for the lifelong process of becoming fully oneself, requires something radical. It requires releasing the grip on who we think we are so that something truer and larger can emerge. It means sitting with the uncomfortable silence instead of drowning it in noise, paying attention to dreams, to instincts, to the strange synchronicities that seem to whisper meaning across the ordinary surface of daily life. Asking with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness, why do I react this way? Where did this fear come from? Is this belief truly mine, or was it handed to me? These questions are not signs of crisis, they are signs of awakening. Here is what all of Jung's work ultimately points toward. You were never truly lost. The self you have been searching for has not been hiding from you. It has been waiting beneath the layers of conditioning, expectation, and fear that accumulated over a lifetime. It has been speaking to you through your longings, your restlessness, your inexplicable grief at a life that looks perfect from the outside, but feels hollow from the inside. Most people live and die as strangers to themselves, not from laziness or weakness, but simply because no one ever told them that a different way was possible, that the discomfort they felt was not a flaw to be managed, but an invitation to go deeper. You do not have to be one of those people. The journey inward is not easy. It demands honesty in the places where you have grown comfortable with illusion. It demands compassion for the parts of yourself you were taught to despise. It demands the willingness to outgrow old stories, even the ones that once kept you safe. But on the other side of that courage is something no external achievement can provide: the experience of being fully, unapologetically, completely yourself. Life, as Jung understood, does not truly begin until you find yourself. And now you know the way.